portion. Great. Hey, welcome everybody. Today we are in the Cali District Innovation Hub webinar series. It's the last one of our school year. And our topic today is educating for a green economy. We'll have a couple of guest speakers today, Siri Salas from the Energy Coalition and Sarah Whiting from 10 Strands to help us explore this topic. We're really thankful that you're here. We know it's at the end of the school year and there are many pressures on your time, but we think this topic will be really valuable and give you an opportunity to kind of think ahead to next year and the years beyond on how we support students in this journey. My name is Nate Ivey. I'm an instructional coach in the Fremont Unified School District. I'll play the role of MC for the webinar today. I'm a member of the California Environmental Literacy's District Innovation Hub, and in the spring of each school year, we've been offering a webinar series to help explore different topics of interest to schools working on sustainability and environmental education. You've heard a little bit about me. Paulina has dropped into the chat a link, link to add yourself to the map. I know we have some repeat participants. If you're coming back, you might find your link on the map and just see if all of your information is true and correct and accurate and up to date. And if there are updates, please feel free to add them. If you're attending for the first time, do show us where you are zooming in from. It's one of our purposes is to build a statewide network and help build connections among people interested in these topics across the state. And we do hope to serve folks in every corner and county of the great state of California. So again, this webinar is brought to you by the California Environmental Literacy Initiative's District Innovation Hub. The District Innovation Hub has a number of goals, including to build a community of district practitioners and partners. One of the ways we do that is connecting through webinars, but also through in-person events, and then just kind of referrals of helping people get to know folks who might have a piece of the puzzle that they need. We do hope to create and curate environmental literacy resources, including these webinar topics, and build capacity for districts to do the work. We're always aiming to cultivate and showcase leading edge exemplars. At the end of the webinar, there will be a feedback form. So if you have a great story or if you're aware of a topic or if you have something that you think would make a great session, please let us know. But we're really excited today to showcase a recent report about the opportunities for California schools to participate in helping educate for a green economy, and also a deep look into what the jobs of the future are looking like. In our work, we try to take a systems approach, thinking about districts as an essential unit of change. We definitely understand that those of you who are joining are likely to be those, intrepid champions, and maybe sometimes, the person who's working the hardest at your school or in your system to do this work. But we really believe it can't be done alone or in isolation. And the way that this work really sticks and lasts is when it happens kind of systemically across a district. There are a number of frameworks to help think about that systemic change, including the California Green Ribbon Schools program, which encourages us to think about our environmental sustainability, our health and well-being, and our environmental education pathways as being components of a well-rounded program within a school district. Other models include the 4Cs model developed by Andrew Yagoyan, thinking about campus, curriculum, community, and culture, and how all of those pieces need to be fitting together to support systemic change. Green Schools National Network also has a beautiful model for this work. We encourage you to check out all of these, but to think about how systemic change can happen in your system and can live beyond the efforts of our intrepid individual leaders. So our webinars follow a pretty traditional format here. We do a couple minutes of welcome and introductions and connections right at the beginning. Then the bulk of the time in the first hour is hearing our presenters on our topic today, which is the call to action report, Educating for a Green Economy. We hope to have some time in whole group for question and answer. But feel free to type questions into the chat at any time. We'll be monitoring the chat and hoping to share responses as quickly as possible. We do want to close the formal presentation around 5 o'clock, just being mindful of people's traditional work days. And if you need to leave at 5, that's absolutely fine. But we will have an opportunity for either breakout room discussions or, depending on the size of the group, whole group conversations to explore more in depth some of the topics that surface in the webinar today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to introduce herself, say a little bit about her co-presenter who will be joining in a little bit, and then to take it from here. Sarah, take it away.
Thanks. So happy to be here and so happy for the people who were able to join us, even though it's May Madness at the end of the school year, especially for our district and site level folks. I'm Sarah Whiting. I'm the Director of Client Engagement and Data Science at 10 Strands. Prior to that, I was a K-12 Strong Workforce and STEM Coordinator at the San Mateo County Office of Education. So CTE and career awareness going all the way down into elementary school has been a passion of mine prior to joining 10 Strands, and now I get to put my passion for preparing students for the real world together with my passion for preparing students for the real world as it relates to the environment. And hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit about that today. I'm also joined by one of the co-leads of the Green Career Cali-wide initiative, Syria, who will be introducing herself a little more later when she jumps into the presentation. But today we're really going to be focused on the green economy and how do we prepare students for that green economy. Now, this has lots of definitions and names. Some people call it the blue economy, the blue-green economy. It kind of depends on how close you are to the ocean and how involved you are in water. But we like to use the UN definition and say that the green economy is an economy that's focused on reduction of carbon emissions, resource efficiency, social inclusivity, resource efficiency, and prevention of the loss of biodiversity and ecosystems services. So really thinking about a whole systems approach to the economy as well. We're not just focused on one potential issue with climate change in the green economy, but a very broad definition of all of the things that could potentially reduce the sustainability of human life on Earth and non-human life on Earth as well. And there's different types of green careers that are part of this green economy. And what's great to see is the US Department of Labor and Occupational Information, or ONET, is really beginning to define green careers. And the three main groups of green careers that are starting to be defined by the Department of Labor are changing skill green occupations, where it's an existing occupation, but some of the skills that are needed for that occupation to be sustainable are starting to shift. So, for example, if we're thinking about car maintenance, shifting from skills around working on combustion engines to EVs and other alternative fuels. There's also higher demand green occupations where there may have been not as many openings in this area prior to some of the climate impacts that we're facing, but because of climate impacts or goals around carbon emission reductions, we're seeing increases in some of the available jobs. A great example of this are electricians who have the skills to install solar panels. And while that used to be a little bit niche, putting in solar panels, now we're seeing way more solar projects than we actually have the electricians for. So there's a huge gap there. And then finally, there are new green occupations. So jobs that never were there before, but that are starting to emerge because of the different shifts in the types of industries that we're seeing because of climate change and its impacts. So why prepare students for green careers? I'm sure there's a lot of reasons, and some reasons resonate with people more than others. I would love to hear from folks which of these reasons resonates the most with you. Is it because California policy and standards set up that expectation that we teach about climate and environmental issues? Is it about the fact that green careers will give students access to high wage, high growth job opportunities? Is it because the world's on fire and we need more students moving into these careers in order to mitigate and adapt to climate change? Or is it because the students you serve really care and want to make a positive difference with the career that they choose? Go ahead and just drop 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the chat with the reason that resonates the most with you. Oh yeah, firefighting is definitely when I see your comment, Nate, that like is growing and growing because we're seeing more and more widespread wildfires. I'm sure the folks in LA are still reeling, feeling that from earlier this year. So I'm seeing a lot of 3s and 4s, 2s and 4s. Yeah. So we're going to go a little bit into the imperative for each of these different reasons and what data really backs this up before we start to get into the how do you do this. So the first thing I wanted to point out is that there are some anchor standards for career and technical education. So for any CTE pathway, regardless of which it is, the anchor standard says that students need to understand the environmental impacts of decisions and regularly make decisions that positively impact the environment. It is something that's baked in, even if they're in like a business pathway or if they're in a healthcare pathway. This is an anchor standard, so it's built into the standards for CTE. And beyond that, the governor just put out a brand new master plan for career education where they called out climate multiple times and spoke about climate imperatives as really driving the need for career education in our schools. And then for our general ed teachers, we have AB 285 and science talking about the need for teaching about climate. And if, we're talking about climate issues, it's also really great to move students from areas of anxiety to hope when they hear that there are people already working on this and there are careers for them if they're passionate about making some changes. There's also the environmental principles and concepts, which are baked into multiple different frameworks, not just science. And there's also imperatives across campus and operations and guidelines as well that really have that systems approach to teaching students about this. So if you're an educator in the room and you're thinking like, am I like actually allowed to teach about green careers? Yes, yes. There is all sorts of support for you teaching about this in your classroom. Beyond that, it's the direction that the industry is going. So based on the 2022 Global Green Report by LinkedIn, they found that there's going to be a 2% gap between the demand for workers with green skills and the supply of workers for green skills as early as next year. And this gap is projected to keep growing over time unless we start to have our pipelines for careers, including things like sustainability skills. And then more recently, the World Economic Forum produced the Future of Jobs report in 2025, and they listed the green transition as one of the 5 main drivers of the global economy. That's going to be one of the top things that changes the jobs that are available and the wages of those jobs that are available. Some of the transformational trends that they saw were that increased efforts in trying to reduce carbon emissions had a 47% rank from the different industries that they talked to as one of those most important drivers. And increased efforts and investments to adapt to climate change was also up there within those top drivers of change for the economy, with 41% of employers saying that that was a major determiner of what's happening in the economy. Also, in terms of job growth, the green energy transition roles are showing up repeatedly on some of the fastest growing jobs across the globe. So we can see that autonomous vehicle specialists, environmental engineers, and renewable energy engineers are within those top 15 highest growth jobs by 2030. And also, first time ever, we're seeing that environmental stewardship is within the top 10 fastest growing skills by 2030. So the industry is speaking and saying that yes, we need our students to be environmentally literate and know how to bring that stewardship into whatever job they're going into. And if you've ever taught environmental literacy or sustainability in your classes, you'll also see that some of the other skills like creative thinking and curiosity and lifelong learning and leadership and social influence are also things that happen when we're teaching about green careers and environmental literacy. So the economy is really making it an imperative that we begin teaching students about the skills that they'll need to get a green job, but also that these green jobs exist. And then also, as I said before, the world's kind of on fire, right? We can see that the unhealthy particle days are increasing. We can see that the average acreage burned in wildfires in California is increasing. Projections for sea level rise are increasing. And the land and ocean temperatures are at like all-time highs. This data is just from January 2025. And we can see a lot of the globe is at much warmer than average or record temperatures, and drought is also increasing in California. So if we want to start to prepare the globe for these challenges, we need students who are empowered to enter careers where they can make a change. And just thinking about some of these climate impacts that we covered, which of these have you or your students experienced personally in the last 5 years? Just go ahead and unmute or type in the chat. Are we already feeling these impacts, or is this like a long future thing? Yeah, fire smoke days, drought impacts, beach erosion and fires. I know I'm based in Los Angeles and we were feeling the wildfires this season and will probably continue to. And then how prepared do you and your students feel to face these continued climate impacts in the future? Are we feeling like, yeah, we're good to go. We have all the curriculum and all the skill building to have these careers filled and really come to solutions? Are we sort of like, I'm seeing Gloria saying like depends on the age. Some of the students are, some of them aren't. Any other thoughts about how prepared we are to tackle these problems? I'm seeing some shaking heads like, no, not really. A lot of feelings of unease that the impacts are in the future, not happening right now. Yeah, for sure.
I'm a little worried that nobody knows how to face these climate impacts.
Yeah, and I feel like when I talk with students and youth, that is a lot of their feeling as well, that they're in this space of hopelessness where they're often taught about climate impacts and environmental problems, but a piece that's missing is the solutions. And knowing that there are adults who are already working on solutions and it's not all falling on our youth in order to solve these sticky problems when they become adults, but that we're working on it together, we're holding hands and facing the future collaboratively, and it's not all falling on them. And I think that's really an important piece around green career education, is helping students understand that these jobs and these solutions are already in place and are already starting, and they can join that movement too if it's something that they want to do. So thinking about support for our students a little bit more specifically, I want you to put in the chat, 1 being you strongly disagree, 4 being you strongly agree, that the students that you serve have the guidance and resources they need to learn about available green careers. You can also just show on your fingers too. So some 3s, some 2s, right? Maybe not as much support around green career awareness as we could have, right? There's always some room to grow. Same scale, the students I serve have the guidance and resources they need to build knowledge, skills, and expertise in the green careers they're interested in. So going beyond just being aware that these careers exist to actually starting to gain specific career skills that would help them land that job when they get out of school. I'm seeing a little more 2s in this one, that we've got the awareness happening in schools, but some of that skill building is still missing. How about the students I serve have the guidance and resources they need to identify the pathways to obtaining that career? So not just knowing that the career exists and starting to build some skills they need, but knowing what steps beyond high school they need to take in order to get that career. So what training programs or what college courses they would need in order to land that job. Again, seeing some disagrees, that we're not quite set up in the education system yet. A strongly disagree from a few people, right? That there might be a big disconnect between what's happening in the K-12 system and beyond. And final question is, the students I serve have the guidance and resources they need to easily transition to their identified pathway from high school through career. So not just knowing what college courses to take, but actually having that warm handoff between high school and community college, or high school and apprenticeship, or high school and college or career. Definitely seeing some disagrees still, that we're seeing maybe not as much connection, as much of a through line as we'd want to see in the education system to really support students to get to that career. And I always pause and think back to probably about 5 years ago now, when I was presenting at a California Science Educators Conference. We had a room of about 40 educators from different grade levels, and we asked the question, what's the purpose of education? And not a single person in that room said anything about careers or life-sustaining wages or things outside of college. It was all about skills and abilities that helped mostly to get to college and be successful in college, but not much beyond that. So it's really a shift in mindset around how do we educate students for after college, or if they're not able to go to college right away, or if they don't want to go to college. So because of that, Cali's Green Career Hub put together this report called The Call to Action for Educating for a Green Economy. In this report, we really identified some needs that are lacking right now in terms of green career awareness and preparation for students. And the first being that environmental systems are under critical pressure. We really need people going into these careers, and that California policies are creating good green jobs, jobs that are life-sustaining wages, that have high growth potential, and that green career education is really needed in order to inform, inspire, and empower students to get into these jobs and thrive there. So our vision at Cali is that every job is a green climate job. It doesn't matter what industry you go into, if you have that sustainability lens, you will bring it with you and be able to impact the work that you're doing in a positive way. And that equitable access to quality green career information and skills education is something we're hoping for all of our students. And that students and job seekers are empowered to achieve California's climate and economic goals, so that we're seeing not just benefit to the economy and not just benefit to the environment and not just benefit to students, but a benefit to all of the above. But we also identified in working with a lot of people in this space that there were some challenges to doing this work in a meaningful way and having that equitable vision. And the first challenge was a lack of a shared understanding of priority green careers. A lot of people, when they start thinking about green careers, they might think about like solar panel installers and end there. There isn't a lot of labor market data that's focused on the green economy to really help support people understanding where are those good green jobs. There's also issues with coordination among California's agencies. Even something as simple as having the same number of career pathways in high school versus community college. They don't match. So if we're trying to have students see a clear pathway and we can't even agree on what the pathways are between high school and college, that's a big challenge for students to try to navigate on their own. There's also very limited coherent standards and pathways around the green economy. There are a few, like sustainable agriculture, like environmental engineering, but how that shows up in some of the other industry sectors hasn't really been determined yet. And there's also unequitable access to green career education. We know that not all districts have the same pathways, and not all CTE teachers or teachers at the high school or middle school level who are doing green career awareness really are distributed evenly. In our data initiative for California school districts that 10 Strands is hosting, we did find that only about 27% of districts show any evidence of any green CTE or career awareness across pathways. And so there's definitely a room for growth to make sure that all of our students have access, not just those who happen to be at a district who's passionate about it and has a teacher that has the correct credential in order to teach green CTE. So of these 4 challenges, I want to get a read of the room. Which do you think is the challenge that resonates the most with you given the context that you're in? And Paulina just put out a poll, and part of this is to, see where people are feeling, but part of it's also as one of the supports for the Caliwide Initiative for Green Career Awareness, this helps us figure out where do we need to put more of our efforts in order to help support you and navigate these challenges. So definitely would appreciate if you would take a moment to quickly just fill out which of these challenges most resonates with you given your district context. And I always find it interesting when we do these presentations in different spaces, these challenges resonate differently. When we're in the community college CTE world, people tend to lean more towards the labor market data shortage. But thinking about this group, I'm wondering which of these challenges you're facing the most. We have about 4 people who have participated. We have 11 people on the call. So if everyone could go ahead and vote in that poll, that would be awesome. And from what I'm seeing, it's pretty much split between the limited coherent strategy or standards and pathways and the unequitable access to green career awareness for sure. I'm seeing that in the chat as well. And Paulina, you can go ahead and end that poll. Just for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and move on. And so to navigate these challenges, there were some recommendations that we put forth from the Cali Green Career Initiative. The first being to have statewide strategic planning and the creation of a roadmap. So really getting clear on what we mean by green career pathways, which pathways are we really working to help support students to go towards, and how do we have those warm handoffs between high schools and community colleges or apprenticeships. And then also we wanted to really focus on coordinated implementation. So how can we get collaboration across the state in order to get funding for this, in order to get curriculum for this, in order to get teacher recruitment and capacity building and statewide green career awareness in all of our districts. We're really hoping that this word and these recommendations continue to spread throughout networks, especially as the new career master plan comes into being and there are groups that are starting to convene around these issues and topics. We really want to make sure that these recommendations continue to be messaged out as far and as wide as possible. But it's not all doom and gloom. We also, in the course of making this report, found a lot of promising practice across the state of different schools and districts and community-based partners who are doing this work in a really meaningful way and starting to show proof of concept that can be scaled across our state. And while only about 27% of districts in our data initiative showed green career evidence, that's beyond the tipping point for change. And so we're really starting to see this growth. And we have a link to the call to action report that we'll be sharing out later, where you can look into all of these different promising practice profiles and see what are some of the ways that we're bringing this career awareness and sustainability skill building into our schools. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Syria to talk about other things that give her hope and share some of the resources for how we can start doing this in our schools.
Hi, everyone. I am Silvia Salas from the Energy Coalition, and also, as Sarah mentioned, a co-chair for our Green Career Initiative working group. And some of the things that give me hope are some of the good work that I see happening in the schools around California. First to highlight is Thurston Middle School with all of their sustainability goals, using our curriculum as well for certification of students. They were also part of the Sustain SoCal, which is there on the end. Sustain SoCal, or OC Foundation, had a Sustainable Campus Challenge, and just seeing so many groups of students working so closely with their school administration, with principals, with folks at the district level to try to implement change on their campus is really enlightening. It's encouraging to see. We also have some wonderful interns, and I see a lot of internship opportunities throughout the Cali group where students are learning about their use of energy and water and waste consumption, food restoration, divergence from landfills, as well as composting and all the little simple things that we can do day by day in each and every single one of us, which absolutely gives me hope that we are moving in the right direction, that we as individuals are putting those practices into action, and we are not only talking the talk but walking the walk in many, many ways. And I see that throughout this group and throughout the folks that are actively engaged in Cali webinars, as well as the working groups and the innovation hubs. So it's really encouraging. But we can move on to the next slide, where we are going to share some resources and how you can get involved. Throughout our working group and the Green Career Initiative, we have quite a few organizations working to move things forward. And if we go ahead into the next slide, you'll see a list. One is the Educating for a Green Economy that Sarah just basically went through and gave us a really high-level overview and highlights of all the things that it encompasses. But if you want to take a quick read or download it for yourself, there is a slide with the QR code as well. And Polina did just throw that link in the chat as well for each and every one of us to download and take a read. It is really enlightening. It does touch on all of the kind of shortcomings we have around green careers, but also on the call to action and what we can do to make change and create that positive impact. We go on to the next one. If you want to learn more about our Green Career Initiative and the work that we're doing there, this slide also has a QR code for the Greater Cali network. If you are not a member, not actively engaged, it is okay to just peruse. We have a wonderful partner portal where you can go in and find opportunities for yourself as an educator or a district admin person, as well as for your students. There's a lot of opportunities with many of our partners for work-based learning, a lot of internship opportunities, volunteer opportunities, as well as community events that are happening on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, and we'd love to have all of you involved as well and sharing and passing on the word. It is statewide, so definitely take a look at your region and where you are, and making sure that you're looking at the right stuff. But every single partner there has a link to their own website as well, with greater opportunities, things like curriculum, as I mentioned, work-based internships, community events, everything from like a beach cleanup to full-long trainings and professional development opportunities as well. So it's a really great place to get quite a few different resources. Some examples of which are in the following two slides, and you will receive the slides. They were shared at the beginning of the webinar. They will be shared after the webinar as well with the recording, so that you can access all of these links to some amazing curriculum, amazing opportunities, as well as just great articles and resources to learn a little bit more. Everything from the Future of Jobs Report 2025 to another partner, USGBC California and their Career Center, as well as Green Schools, which was mentioned throughout this call. The work that San Mateo County Office of Education is working on, Lacey Fellowships. You can move on to the next slide. We have a few more. Works for Water, Get into Energy, Rising Sun Center of Opportunity has some wonderful internship opportunities as well if you want to be a host site, and have some great initiatives and thought ideas up in the Bay Area as well as in the inland area. They have wonderful, wonderful opportunities with 16 to 24-year-old opportunity youth. We also have Green Building Career mapping, as well as Career One Stop, which has a wonderful information about jobs and career opportunities, everything from how many jobs will be opening in the future for the US as well as California, and state by state, and as well as pay, which is such an important piece of it. Next slide, we have just a wealth of information. A few more: Center for Excellence in Labor Market Research, NEED curriculum, SEI's curriculum with energy and environmental design. Energy is Everything from our own, the Energy Coalition, and quite a few others. So throw it over to the next slide. as well as joining the Cali Partner Portal and perusing that. There's the opportunity to go on the newsletter. You'll get updates to what's happening quarterly as well as monthly, as well as sector-specific webinars like these, so that you're up to date with everything that's happening in the community and in the learning environment around Cali. I'll leave that up for just a bit, and Paulina will likely put the links up in the chat as well as the slide deck chats. And we can move on to the next slide.
Just really wanted to plug, in July, we do have a panel of 5 different folks from the arts, media, and entertainment industry sector talking about how sustainability is showing up there. And we know a lot of districts do have arts, media, and entertainment pathways. It's one of the most numerous sectors across the state. And it's not a sector where a lot of people are like, yes, I totally see the connection between sustainability and the arts, or sustainability and media. So we really wanted to bring together some folks who were working in the industry or helping to support those transitions for youth to really show how that sustainability lens is showing up in AME. So definitely register. That's going to be on July 23rd. It'll be a virtual panel webinar with some folks from the industry and education, as well as the CDE.
Absolutely. And of course, now time for appreciation, reflection, and comments. And I think I'll throw it back to you, Nate.
Yeah, let's maybe hold off on the appreciation, reflection, and commitment portion, because we do have some time for some whole group conversation and question and answer. So first of all, thank you to Sarah and Syria and the Green Career Hub for putting together this collection of resources and sharing their thinking and inspiring us to do more in this arena. I always think of presentations like this as a river that's kind of flowing by, and I think it's important to kind of reach into that river and take what you want and put it into your reservoir. So, take a moment, reflect, but I would like to open it up for any comments or questions that you might like to have Sarah or Syria address. So just feel free to unmute or throw a question in the chat if there's something you'd like to explore a little bit more.
I'll throw one out there. So great presentation. Thank you. It's really exciting to see all of the resources that are available. My question really is, so often I think educators think about this as a high school, and even more specifically, junior, senior high school issue. And yet, can we talk a little bit more about support in elementary and middle school? Because I see a lot of interesting things happening there as well that fit into this sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always like to think about preparation for careers as a continuum, starting as early as elementary school. So that general awareness that green careers exist and that there are people who look like your students working on the problems that give them anxiety and are already starting with those solutions. That is great for elementary, especially as students are just starting to think about, like, am I a science person, or am I a math person, or do I like to do things with animals, or do I like to be outside? Those kind of preliminary thoughts around what students might want to pursue later on in life can happen really early, and showing students that there are those available careers early on is great. And then having students start to explore what some of those careers might look like and feel like in middle school is great. When I was at the San Mateo County Office of Education, we used some funding from the K-12 Strong Workforce Grants to actually create a 5th grade green entrepreneurship unit, and then modules across multiple different industry sectors for middle schools focused on green career awareness. All of it's open source because it's from the statewide grant. So feel free, it's in those links to use them if you are a teacher or supporting teachers of younger grades. And then transitioning from that exploration into real preparedness in high school is kind of that next step on that continuum. So are we giving students the skills that are transferable to those careers in our high school classes beyond just, I know this job exists and I think I might like it, but what do I actually need to be able to do in order to get that career moving on? So really moving students through that continuum, starting in elementary, will help students really understand what pathways are available to them and give them the skills they need to pursue them. And also hopefully make it so that if they do want to go to college, they're not going in with zero direction and racking up a bunch of student debt and graduating from college with a degree that they don't know what to use for. So that's another part of making sure that we're preparing students, is that we're not preparing them for student debt without a job at the end of it.
Thank you, Sarah. And just for our elementary teachers that are online here, I also think it's not, you don't have to be prepared to be a career counselor, but if our students are getting authentic learning experiences where they're doing the work, if your students are putting together a waste management plan, if they're doing air quality testing, all of those authentic learning things that we think about in environmental literacy, where kids do real things as opposed to learning about or just awareness, that's preparing them for these careers. So you don't have to be a career counselor, but if we can put kids in authentic learning experiences, you're doing your job.
Tim, just to add on to that, thinking of two examples in our district. One is we've just been seeing a real uptick on the science and engineering fair projects that are environmentally related, even though it's not a specific category. It's just kind of that general, do a science and engineering project. But the environmental ones and the health ones, where like kids are working on a real problem in the real world, have just been really inspirational. So, we've seen some examples, like a fifth grade student made a robot that recycles. It has some AI sensors in it, and it can tell what the different items are. So that won, like the county prize. And I think there's something to that. The other is, in our district, we mapped out and had a lot of conversations about what are the age appropriate environmental responsibilities for students at different grades. And what are the things that they need to learn just as a behavior, and what are the things that they need to learn the why behind the behavior. I don't necessarily care if they know that, recycling a can saves 3 hours worth of TV energy. I just need them to know to put the can in the blue bin at certain ages, and then maybe older kids are, monitoring those systems or designing solutions for things that have been hard to recycle or that are frequently littered. But there's lots of opportunities for students to have green jobs in elementary school.
Yeah, and actually, if I can add to that as well, I think another important piece is to really show students people in these careers that they can relate to. And I think, definitely if you can find, community members, parents, and so forth who are in these positions and in these, in these careers, to bring them in so that students can relate to them, right? And I think also something that, in STEAM that we've been trying to do is really focus not only on the job itself, but the journey of the people who are in those roles, what the journey that they took to get there, right? To show students that, hey, you know what? That person's life sounds very similar to mine. It's something that I can relate to. And so then maybe then, if they can do it, then I can do it, right? And I think Miriam Wright Edelman, the founder of the Children's Defense Fund, she said, you can't be what you can't see, right? So we want our students to be able to see themselves in these green career roles.
Tim, thank you so much for throwing out that question. It generated, some great conversation. Are there other questions for Sarah, or the slide about the appreciation, reflection, and commitment's been up for a moment? If anybody wants to share something that's on their mind about what they appreciate about this work, or maybe some ideas of the next steps you might take, we'd really welcome hearing some of those ideas as well.
I think this is also a great opportunity to tie in civic action with these careers. And, you know, in our own district in Laguna, we piloted the Civic Seal of Engagement Award. And I noticed as we were working with this focus group of students that they were doing their reflections on their civics projects that were really about green careers. And getting everyone involved in these initiatives, and they kind of just easily landed on those environmental impacts. But then what's the next step? So learning about voting, learning about attending city hall meetings, and typically what we vote for, what those discussions in city council meetings have a lot to do with infrastructure, a lot to do with climate adaptation mitigation. So it'd be a cool parallel to when you're designing systems to incorporate the two.
Thanks, Glo. Other thoughts or reflections or connections that people are making?
Well, for me personally, since I don't have this, a curriculum in front of me, or even like broad sweeps of the paintbrush, I tend to jump around and pop from one thing to the next without, just based on what I personally am interested in the moment. And so it would be wonderful to have, some clearer standards to look at. And I work with 18 to 22-year-olds, so I do know my CTE standards for my my section of work, but I did. So I'm really excited to take a look at the environmental ones and try to see if maybe that will give me some direction. But I'm wondering also if anyone is working on curriculum that gives ideas. I am firmly of the belief that every job needs to be a green job. No matter what job you are doing, you take it and you make it a green job because that's what your core value is. And I would love to see some curriculum developed in that respect.
I'll jump in and say our Energy is Everything curriculum does follow that idea. And it is K-12, so we don't quite work with the 18 to 22s, but there are some of those high school lessons which would potentially be apt for those type of students. And just, every single lesson has a connection not only to a career, but also to an action and actions that students can take to make their environment, their community, their home better, greener, more sustainable. So we are really striving to do that, and I know there's quite a few others as well. SCI, who's I think was on the call, also works with some amazing curriculum. Some of the school districts are developing things, and so a lot of the resources that we shared earlier have kind of that theme and work through, because it's true, as everybody said on the call, the earlier we start, there's no greater monitor of our sustainability in a home than the kids that live in it. So once they believe to turn off the light and that's important, they're going to do it, and they're going to call you on it when you don't do it yourself as an adult. So it really is important to start early. And I love what you said, Lynn, about every job being a green career. And having the potential to be a green career. It's something that we advocate for quite a bit at the Energy Coalition. And, we talk about, even if you're a chef, if you're, getting your food sustainably sourced and from local markets, if you're a doctor, if you practice sustainable practices, if, whatever you're in construction, getting your building materials from sustainably sourced providers and vendors. So it is an opportunity, and it is something that is happening. And we just need to get the word out.
Sarah, is there anything you would add? I'm just, kind of appreciating Lynn's comment as helping us preview what's going to be coming up in our either breakout room or extended conversation, talking about the present, some of the challenges and opportunities we face, the future, what might be coming down the road in terms of resources and support, and, what gives us hope. But Sarah, is there anything you'd like to add to Lynn's question about just kind of, resources that support this effort?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different resources that can kind of be piecemealed together to make a full scope and sequence across the different grade levels from K all the way to college. At this time, there isn't like a really clear and coherent scope and sequence and curriculum yet. So I think that is part of our call to action is how can we take these pieces that are being developed by different districts, different teachers, different community-based partners, and really make something that we can consistently scale across the state. So it's not just about the folks who come to webinars like this and hear about resources who have access. It's the whole state who has access to these resources. So definitely an area for improvement there. Another thing that just came out that we're really excited about at 10 Strands is the Seeds to Solutions curriculum. That's also K-12, and it's really focused on environmental justice and real world problems and putting students in those solutionary seats to be able to start thinking about how they can move into these spaces of change and solutions and the folks who are already doing that. So that's another one that's free and open to everyone to be able to start, bringing this into courses beyond CTE and beyond science, since it's an integrated curriculum or integrated supplemental curriculum, because it's 1 unit per grade level.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. If anyone else has questions for the whole group or another response to this kind of appreciation, reflection, and commitment, feel free to drop it in the chat. But let's move on, and we'll kind of wrap up the formal hour and then move into breakout rooms if appropriate, or just conversation. So this is the last District Innovation Hub webinar of this series. And it's a good time to kind of look back and reflect and get your feedback on this session. And if you've been to some other sessions, we'd love to hear about that as well. So let's go to the next slide. I want to mention that the District Innovation Hub isn't the only group that has organized webinars under the CALI umbrella. The Green Careers group has organized webinars, the County Office of Education, the Community Partner Portal. So there's a whole wealth of resources that are available in the CALI webinar archive. So if you've come to these through the district invitation, just know that there's a lot of other topics out there that might be of interest to you. We're taking a look at next year how to maybe bring these under one umbrella, so that there's opportunities all the way throughout the year, not just our spring series in the district, but that if you're participating in district stuff, you would also be have a pathway of knowing about all the other opportunities. So just know there's kind of a wide array, but we probably haven't tackled every topic and every problem and every concern, and I'm sure we haven't shared every best practice or highlighted every amazing program out there. So your feedback really helps us generate good content. So Paulina has dropped into the chat a link to a feedback form. What I would appreciate is if you open that link and maybe start filling out the form, but you don't necessarily have to stay on the Zoom to fill this out, but have it open and maybe be working on it as I move into the next portion of the slide. The way we typically structure these sessions is the first hour is direct, presentation and kind of a sharing of information. And then we hold a space in the last half hour for either breakout rooms or conversations around some different topics. We have a pretty small group, so we might just stay all together, but we can, quickly open up a room if a couple of people want to go talk about one thing and if you want to go talk about something else. So let me kind of present the categories of things that we were hoping to explore in this last half hour and invite you to stick around and explore them with us. So the first topic that we love to have a broader conversation about is what gives you hope. So take a moment and think about if you have a good story in this space. You've seen some news, something has happened in your district. Your motivation for doing this can help inspire others and their motivation for doing this. Or if you've seen some really great examples. I would love to share one after I go through all of these. So the other category that we invite conversation about is thinking about the present moment. You know, Lynn raised a challenge that she faces is that she doesn't have like kind of a comprehensive pathway of resources that take her from point A to B. So she often finds herself kind of jumping around based on the interests of the moment. So that's, you know, a present challenge. But what are some of our imperatives in this moment? What are some of the gaps in resources? What supports might we need? And where are our current educational programs on track to live up to these commitments? So like, where are we right now is another category that we'd be interested in exploring. And then the last area is thinking about the future, thinking about an ideal future. What would an optimal education ecosystem look like to support green pathways? So, you know, what's in our heart of hearts? What's in our dream of dreams? What would be magical and amazing if we get this exactly right? And I think, you know, with the connection that we have here through CALI, there's some capacity to organize and build some of this future. And once we have the vision, across the state, we have the talent and the willpower to create the tools that we need. So let's talk about that beautiful future for a moment as well. So I think let's just maybe leave this up, but maybe not do it as breakout rooms because we're such a small group. And so that you can feel confident about speaking freely, I think what we'll do is we'll also close the recording portion of this webinar and move into a space where we can speak freely. So I think Paulina's closed